guys, welcome back to Pankration now. I'm Aris Makris, and for those that don't know, I'm the founder and owner of the Spartan Pankration MMA Fitness Academy and the founder of Armak Pankration. And for those that don't know what Armak Pankration is, it's short for Aris Makris. So now that we got that out of the way, because I have people constantly asking me, "Oh, what's Armak? What's Armak? Sounds like an industrial strength cleaner." Well, it is. We do some industrial strength cleaning up, but not in the way that most people think. So yeah, that distinguishes me, and that is the name that is known for throughout internationally for the closest to what our ancestors would be practicing in terms of pankration, the principles and the technical involved portion of it. So it's been a while that I've done a podcast. It's I think this is the fifth one, and a lot of things have been happening at the school and haven't had time. My co-host George Gio has been absent due to other business ventures that he's been involved in, but will be back with me I think next week for a MMA portion of the sportscast of Pankration Now, and we got a couple of good topics on that, on some of the fights coming up, on things on the GSP fights, which we had predicted, me and George, before anybody else actually. We were talking about it, and I think if you look back on some of the other podcasts that we did, we had mentioned, if GSP came back, he would be, who would be the guy that he'd be fighting, and I think we did predict that he would be fighting Bisping, and here you are, him and Bisping will be getting it on, and I think it's exciting that GSP will be back, after his sabbatical. I think he's going to be in great shape, and he's going to be ready to represent us Montrealers, Quebecers, Canadians, and MMA enthusiasts in general. We did touch off on a couple of things last time. I was comparing the who would win in a tournament, in a pankration tournament, comparing the two, the modern day top tier MMA guy versus an ancient pancratiast, and when I say top tier, I mean top tier internationally. We're talking about even the guys of old, whether it be Fedor or Minotauro, or the newer guys that are up here, the lighter weights like would be GSP or McGregor, or any one of the top guys that are out there now, and compared them in a more, I'd say, well, it was a theoretical comparison to what it would be like if they had to fight it out, under the original pankration rules of ancient Greece, and what would be the outcome. And I think I kind of gave the major points as to why an ancient guy would probably destroy, would destroy a modern day combatant today. And what I wanted to do is touch up on some of the premises around that, which pertain to today's real life scenarios and the training that that the people go through in preparation, be it real life or be it in the cage. And I think because it's such a huge topic, there's going to be a lot of it left for much later on, also in other programs, to discuss the different variables and the nuances between reality and sport, taking nothing away from sport, because you get an amateur or you get a professional MMA fighter, and they're pretty well trained, by today's standards, and you take a guy, and there's so much to compare with in terms of different systems, and what whether they're competing against a guy who's fighting in a kung fu system, who thinks his system is strictly for the death, or a karate system, or generally I think any top MMA guy would probably outdo most of these traditional fighters. But then again, there are traditional fighters that are very well trained, all rounded today, between the grappling and the stand-up work. So that's quite a bit, of stuff to analyze. And it is worth analyzing quite a bit of it. Don't forget, I mean, the MMA is it's not a system. MMA is not a system. It's comprised of different disciplines in there, and some people choose different roads. And BJJ today is one of them. They do Thai boxing was originally one of them that was what do you call it? Accepted as one of the requirements, if we can use that word, for being a mixed martial artist, to get into an MMA tournament. Although today that's not the standard. I mean, there's a lot of guys coming in from different from different systems, and even the Thai fighters have tried to adapt to a more MMA type of environment. Although personally, I don't believe that Thai boxing is the ultimate in terms of preparing for striking. Now you're going to say, well, you can mix boxing and Thai boxing together, and there's a lot. I personally prefer Kyokushin karate. They have a much more natural stance to them. Their toughness and the ability to check is much more better than a Thai boxer. I think they proved it even in the old days between Thai and Kyokushin. When I was studying Kyokushin as a teenager, we've seen a lot of Thai fighters against Kyokushin guys. They were the toughest guys up against them. But Kyokushin had such an array of different type of kicks, and the discipline behind that was, having participated in for years, was much more strenuous than I'd say in terms of drilling these different type of kicks and kick combinations, kick hand combinations, than a Thai boxer does, because a Thai boxer, has his opponent in front of him. I mean, they're not exactly the type that are great with different axe kicks or spinning hook kicks or spinning back kicks. They got a good round kick, and that's about it. I have my own personal reason for it, which eventually later on I will, having done Thai also at a very young age too, I have my own reasons why I would prefer a Kyokushin more than anything if I had no choice, right? But today it's about adapting the different type of kicks, regardless of where it's coming from, to meet the standards, of that of an MMA fighter, and the needs that have to be addressed inside an octagon, right, or a ring, or wherever the event is held. But going back to the comparison between the MMA fighters and today's MMA fighters and the ancient pancratists, there were many different type of extreme type of workouts that an ancient pancratiist did back then as opposed to an MMA fighter today. First and foremost, the bags were completely different. I mean, they used sandbags, rock bags. So obviously the impact level was much different. The ability for the arm, the fist itself, the wrist, the shoulder, the core, to be able to adapt to that type of impact on something as heavy and as hard upon impact, that imparted on the human body, was completely different than what you're seeing today. Today, guys are wrapped up. I mean, you couldn't get them more wrapped up, and it's like a giant diaper on a hand, And I mean, how strong can a hand or a wrist be when the when the wrist is being held together by, and the knuckles are being held together by an external component, as opposed to the bones themselves becoming tougher, the fascia and the wraps around the bones and the muscles, strengthening themselves, including the wrist, which is the weak link of the punch. So these guys had nothing to, when they trained, they had nothing to strengthen them, and that was known. That's why they trained separately from everybody else. And at my school, we still maintain that type of bag. None of my bags are under 400 pounds. I think the lightest bag I have is about 375. And they're all hard upon impact, including the sandbags that we have that are there for a particular purpose, right? So, not to make a huge story out of it, and not to go back to to what we had discussed in the previous, covered in the previous podcast. You can check it all out on my last one. Would an MMA, top tier MMA, would an ancient pancratiist beat an MMA fighter of today? But it is noteworthy to say that if you take a look at the differences in terms of the quality of type of training that they had between them, I mean, they didn't segregate themselves from the top to the bottom because they knew it could happen at any time, so they had to address that. Second, there was no up against the octagon, and I have my, when you're training up when you're training for real life, there is no octagon, and you're not always going to be up against something that is as, well, controlled, an environment that is perfect for you to be able to do things. You're in clubs, you're running into other people, you're running into the bar, and the bar doesn't have a perfectly flat wall or a cage that you could actually sit there and wrestle a guy against, In the street, it's the same thing. You're not always put up against something. And personally, I mean, I had my MMA is MMA, and it has been structured today in the way that it had been presented back then with the cage, and that's what MMA cage fighting is today. Personally, I think that I have my own personal disagreements with structuring a fight around something that can be used as a weapon, and a cage is used as a weapon. Whether you wedge somebody up against there and make his head completely uncomfortable, hard for him to move this out, that doesn't always take place in in the street or in a club, right? So I mean, like, there's always some type of room to move, although you didn't have an entire stadium. You did have to watch out in the street, if you're on the sidewalk, about cars, this, that, other people going, walking around, the other guy's friends, if you were jumped by more than one person. So there's, it opened up your peripheral vision. There was, these little nuances play a big role in the way that you're going to train, the way that you respond, and what you see. As a doorman, for most of my adult life in Montreal's, toughest and more popular, toughest clubs, were some very, the who's who used to, converge into these clubs. I had the experience of seeing many situations that pit different people against each other, and people that were trained relative to people that weren't trained. And back then, not everybody was comparing systems, right? Although the times they would meet up with each other, and you'd see who had more, right? Given the space they had, whether it was open or it was closed. Most Taekwondo guys had no chance, at a closed up space. They would get taken in by the guy who had good hands, and that was it. You couldn't take a punch to the face. I mean, you were down. I don't care what, what you knew. If you could not take it, all you can do is dish it, but you couldn't take it, you were in trouble anyways, So, we've come a long way since then, and we still have a long way to go, right? But nothing changes. We haven't reinvented the wheel. The wheel had already been invented, and it was perfected, and it lost its perspective along the way for many reasons, and now we're, I think what we wanted to do is give back its perspective again. When you look at MMA today, dissecting it and comparing it to Pankration, I think mixed martial arts, which is not a system again. The systems are the arts taught within there, and then somehow they try to mend everything together, and everybody works a little differently based on body size or what their base is originally. Guys that are coming in from wrestling are trying to adapt to to the stand-up. Some are doing a good job. Others are, realize that along the way that there's guys that are out there that are much more adept in the stand-up. Won't allow them to take them down as easy, and that's been proven. They're giving these wrestlers a hard time, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys a hard time. So everybody kind of falls back into their their base. Others are coming in from kickboxing or Thai boxing, and they got a great stand-up, and if they're able to defend against the guys shooting in, wanting to take down to the ground, well, that's been proven that they can keep it up, and they keep it on the stand-up. It's not always the same thing. Again, it all depends on the type of ruling that you have, that limits the ability of a individual, of what he can do. I mean, if you can't come down, 12-6, that takes a lot away from the reality of things, of a guy clinched into you on the, while you're on the top position. I mean, you can't come down banging this way. That takes a lot of power away from impact of being able to get away from somebody, which, you take away certain impact weapons, whether, and I have to give it to one championship, one fight championship out of Asia, because they can get away with that. They're not limited by a boxing commission or a sports commission that says, well, you can't do this because it's too brutal, or, it's too dangerous, and because that's how the countries like North America, is ruled by. It does open up, an array of strategy for somebody. Yeah, soccer kicks count, but in the street, so do they. That's what happens, and you got to be able to know how to defend yourself against that. You got to be able to counter that. And don't forget, back in the ancient days, you had guys that were twice the size of the other opponent. You'd face somebody that was 100 pounds heavier than you, and somehow you found yourself on your back. Now, the majority of the time, the bigger guy would win, but not all the time. There were very known fights. There are many known fights of the smaller, lighter guy being able to take the bigger guy. Because don't forget, while bigger guys are explosive, the lighter guys are much quicker. And everybody was very well trained to that system. Very, very well trained to that system. They didn't lack anything. They understood it very well. They knew what the consequences were if they were caught, off guard, or if they were caught in a particular position, especially from a bigger guy. So, if you're fighting a bigger guy, mobility was everything. It wasn't, let's just shoot in, take his leg, and then trip him and then get him down. And no. Everybody was very well adapted. I mean, they knew their strategy. It was very hard taking a big guy down, and they knew that they had to work in flank, in and out, in and out, in and out. And the bigger guy didn't have to worry as much, but he did have to worry about the smaller guy and how well the smaller guy was able to outmaneuver the bigger guy, catch him on his, in between his strikes, catch him off rhythm, and then maybe flank him, take his back. And a lot of guys were known for taking the back and choking from the rear. Some guys that were put on the ground, they knew that, the first thing, you saw it in early MMA events where, especially during Pride time, when Pride was on, by that time the UFC had already adopted, some strict rulings where there was no soccer kicks that they had, on the ground, or any kick coming down from the up position downwards, whereas in Pride they would allow them because it was out of Japan. So they gave credit, to the sport. They allowed for, these things to go on because it allowed you to use your full, your full arsenal without going to extremes. And you saw a lot of these guys would be on their backs, especially the Brazilians, and they'd be on their backs, trying to work from there, and on the back, working the kicks to the shins and maybe upwards, and there was things like that. And this is not new. This has been known and documented to be, to be a part of Pankration back in the day. Because what are you going to do? I mean, you have to defend yourself from that position. You just can get up when you felt like getting up, right? So there are things that were comparable, but the training itself was much more strenuous back then because there was no pampering of the body. There was hitting heavy sandbags, kicking heavy sandbags. I mean, guys were known to put their foot and fist through, thick pigskin, punching bags that were filled with either, some type of either smooth rocks or sand themselves, or combination of the two. I mean, these guys were very advanced in all areas. They were thinkers. So, and there was many instances where it's documented where coaches would sit together, pedotrives, that's what they were called back then. They were known and documented to be chronicled as they'd sit and converge, with each other and talk about the necessity of different type of training for different type of athletics, right? And the type of training enhancement per sport. And the different type of training within, let's say, a Pankration for Pancratius at that time. So they were much more tougher than most people think today. I think today people can only explain things by what has been presented to them, right? So they see a boxer punching because MMA fighter going to a boxer to learn how to punch, to be better at the sport. And so they say, well, what do you mean, a Pancratius didn't learn how to box from a boxer? Never, ever. So how did they get their boxing skills? Well, their boxing skills weren't exclusive to just the boxing. They weren't boxers to begin with, although many Pancratius, and including the wrestling, many Pancratius were known to go from within a tournament from their own respective art, Pankration, fight in a wrestling system, and then go into the fight into the wrestling tournament, and then into the boxing tournament. And a lot of them were known to have won all three. That I find phenomenal, But again, they didn't have different wrestling rules. Like today you have every, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or grappling tournament has different rules and different points. There were no points back then. There was no whatever. You had to submit the guy or the guy had to give up. And that's the way it should be, because today you have guys like donkey guards and stupidities. I mean, the fucking shit that comes out of that is fucking incredible, man. I mean, who the fuck fights backwards on a fucking street? And I like this one illegal move that a guy did as a guy was going backwards on a donkey guard, attempting a donkey guard, and fucking kicked him in the fucking ass. Threw him forward. I mean, anybody else would kick him in the fucking balls. I mean, what the fuck is that? This is what we turned into. And I understand why Helio today would be literally turning in his grave, Helio Gracie, or some of the older Gracies were sitting there going, what the fuck is that? I mean, what happened to the real fighting? It's turned into like, you can't touch me, your eyelashes can't touch me, so I'm allowed to do this. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's absolutely fucking crazy where we've been to. I mean, the ancients must be looking at it. I'm talking about ancient Greeks. I'm talking about anybody ancient warrior, Germanics, Celts, fucking Vikings, you know, the Romans, the Greeks, Palestinians. They'd be looking at this shit and they'd be going, what the fuck? What the fuck is that? Is that guy asking to get bum fucked or what? Excuse my language. But I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, we've taken it to the point where now it's not even, every grappling tournament is different points. And then people can sit there and lay and pray and get points for that. And wow. I mean, seriously, you know? And that's why most people will say, well, that's why the grappling side is when you're watching only a grappling tournament, grappling only tournament, it can become a little boring, except for the guys that are only doing grappling and really appreciate that and have the patience to watch that. But I'd rather see somebody, that, you know, two people who are really, really very well skilled go at it. And it shows where it goes. It shows where it'll go. It's not necessarily always on the ground. And it can go to the ground. It doesn't, when it does get to the ground, it doesn't happen on the ground. The guy doesn't, they don't always have the control they want to have over the guy that's on top. Especially the guys like a good structure on him and he's taking shots and putting the other guy in, and the other guy can't clinch him in, can't keep him in. That's what it is. That's what it's like. And don't forget, on the ground outside, take a guy and fucking pin him up, lift him and pin him on the you know, on the curb of the sidewalk if you want to get out of something. I mean, that'll hurt. You know, and ram his head up against a fucking car, you know, I was just trying to, you know, keep you in a position. There's many elements out there that'll make it hard. Now, again, you can say, as, you know, there's the other argument. This guy could do that, this guy could do this, but against who, though? Against who, and what is he trained for? And you can take a guy, you know, that has not trained for anything, you know, and get tangled up really bad against, here's the guy with the BJJ, you know, taking on a guy who's, yeah, but what's that guy trained in, though? The guy doesn't know any ground, of course the guy with BJJ is going to fucking take him. Add a little bit of, you know, defense against a clinch or defense against a shoot to a boxer, changes the, you know, changes the game a little bit. You know, so it makes it a little harder for the other guy to be able to just shoot him when he feels like it. You know, so everything changes as long as you've had one extra training element into it, one extra form of preparation against something, you know, and it's constantly drilled into it. So, you know, we're never talking about two equally trained individuals. So back in the day, wrestling had just one element, you know, it had one rule across the board, and it was real. I can choke you out, I can fucking, you know, if you had hair, I can pull you by the hair and wrap my arms around you, I can pin you down by the hair, you know, and try to outmaneuver you, you know, and get a better position on you. I had toe holds, fucking finger breaks, toe breaks, everything you can imagine I had. So it wasn't, you know, it didn't have different rules. I drop you on your head, suplex you on your head. Okay, in Pride there was many of those where you could suplex a guy. Now they've taken out these elements for it, so you've kind of like, you know, created a comfort zone and you know, a safety zone between you know, for the fighters, which takes out that element that if ever they find themselves in that position where a guy's going to suplex them and catches him off guard and suplexes him in the street, they're not prepared for that shit. You know, so if you're not prepared, and I don't even want to get into some videos that I see on YouTube where they're describing a self-defense technique, you know, and I question myself and I go, I don't think these people have ever been in that position to do that, you know. And if anybody allows that guy to get that close to be able to do that, well, then he deserves to get what he gets, you know. So then again, don't forget, who are you training, who are you defending against, right? So, you know, back in the day, they had to defend themselves against all these things, whether it was a double leg, a single leg, to pick up, to take down, to this, to that, whatever. It was two snakes going at each other, you know, but the rules were simple. There were simple rules. Tap out, well, lift the finger, you know, or choke the guy out, or knock the guy out by slamming him on his head or on his back or on his whatever, you know, they're rendering him unconscious. Today it's this rule, that rule, this rule, that rule. It's absolutely insane. So, you know, once we've added more rules into the pie, things change automatically, and they change within the training. Same guy who you know, same goes for somebody who's take a very well trained individual who can you know, who can defend standing, who's, you know, very good on the stand up and on the ground, and add a, you know, put a little Cali or knife fighting into him, you know, and that changes the game automatically. Add a little knife into, you know, put a little knife into it, and things change. Whereas the guy that, you know, has not trained in that won't know how to defend against that. You know, or a military individual who's got a, you know, who's got a 45 here, or some of them carry the, you know, a 45 up over here, or a pistol over here, or semi-automatic, or not, or his gun up over here on the side, or and they have to get into positions, you know, and have the guy avoid, you know, taking his you know, his weapon away from him. There's many aspects to it today, but I don't think it gets as complicated as that. It's just understanding what happens when this is involved, what happens when that is involved. When you have too many rules and not much is involved except for this and that, it takes you out of your game, and your reflexes and the ability, your peripheral vision kind of like closes in, because you don't have to worry about the sides and the back. Not taking anything away from any top tier MMA individual. These guys are fucking ferocious fighters, very strong and, you know, very athletic, but put something real in the way, and you know, add something into the mix in there where they least expect it from, and they become victims of things. So again, it depends on what you train and how you train it. Back in those days, there was no ruling to it. Okay, wrestling had its rules. You weren't allowed to strike. You know, you weren't allowed to strike, but you can grab by the throat. You can grab the guy's fucking nuts, man. You know, and fucking hold him there. You know, as long as you want, if you got caught in a hold. You know, you break fingers, which today you're not even allowed. You can't even go close to that. It's not sportsmanlike. And I hear stuff today, you know, which things I did want to talk about later on. You know, the reality versus the sports side, because I think today's sport has superseded, you know, the reality of fighting, and you know, and what goes on in the street. And it kind of shocks me to hear some of the stuff that these newcomers are saying. You know, like what is manly and what is not, and what is the right way and what is the wrong way. You know, I'm sorry, man. I grew up in an era where the guy wanted to do you in, and he did you in real bad, man. He put you on the ground, and that's when the fight really started. He'd stomp on your face, and, you know, you wouldn't look the same anymore. Oh, so I'm going to avoid kicking him in the balls or taking a bite out of his face to get to where I need to go because it was unsportsmanlike. It's not sport, man. I'm defending myself. I'm defending my life. I've got my girlfriend or wife or whatever with me, and this guy wants to do me in. Oh, what? I'm not supposed to kick to the balls? I'm not supposed to jab into the eyes? And then we have the argument of, you know, jobbing doesn't really work. I don't know these people that say stupidities like that. I see a lot of trolls on the internet that will say things like, you know, eye jobbing doesn't really work because of this and this. And I wonder myself, and I go, these guys have never been jabbed in the eye, or by somebody that knows what the fuck he's doing. Somebody that knows what he's doing. I mean, we have principles in Armak Pankration, you know, that have been a staple of the Armak Pankration, which is the 3D principles. They are disorient, disable, destroy, and they work accordingly, right? There's a method behind the madness, like they say. You know, there's a methodology to get to a certain place. I need to create an effect. I need to prepare my thing, my recipe in order to be able to get to my objective. You know, I just want to take shots uselessly into where's his weak side. I do, but I also want to have certain follow-throughs that when I do find that weak spot, that crack in the wall, I can go in, and I've trained myself to get in properly, right? So when we do eye jab, for example, and I advocate that to all the women and to all the guys. They're fighting in the street. They got a street. There's many ways of doing things. The one thing I don't advocate is, you know, this tight finger thing, you know, where number one, that can create major problems. You know, I don't do this, and, you know, if anything, I go with a loose hand that allows. So if for example, if it's meeting the face, the nose, for example, or the forehead or whatever, if it's meeting the bridge of the nose, I'm not going to be tight, or my fingers will just do this. I'm more or less loose, so either or will get in, but it will be loose enough so it can have a bit of a. And when I do hit, I will hit with the palm with my fingers in, but it'll be a full hit with the palm though. And when I do, if I do have to strike, it's never in a straight line. I never come into a straight line. It'll always be on almost a roundish position. So they never really see it coming straight out. I mean, this unheard of stuff, you know, is great for some amateurs that don't know what they're doing, you know, but to make value of the eye strike, not the eye jab, to striking in the eyes, it is, you know, I say, well, people moving their head left and right, this not, well, that's fine. Oh, okay. There's a time. It's called timing. You train for that. You train for that, and you don't just dump it out like this. And there's a follow through that's included. I'm not just out trying to take a guy's eyes out. There's a reason why I'm going in that direction, and there's a follow through that goes with it too. You know, and again, it goes to say, like, where am I? Am I at a distance? Am I close to the guy? Have we already started close to the guy? Has the conflict started at the cache with somebody, and all of a sudden this and that? I mean, and then there's how much pressure do I put in the eyes? If my life depends on it, literally depends on it, I mean, I'm not going to hesitate, and I'll try to put my fingers as far deep into his face, into his eyes as possible. If it's just something like, you know, a pretty big-sized individual, or, you know, the threat is viable, it'll be a scrape. It'll be just a touch. Hey, man, you get touched by fucking, you know, specks of dust, and you're doing this. Imagine a fucking couple of fingers just touching, grazing, you know, your eyes. First of all, the reflex that the eyes do is enough. Even if it doesn't get to the eyes, just to get to here, it'll cause you to do this. Well, that's the 2-3 second window of opportunity that a knowledgeable person needs to get in and finish and do what he needs to do. Now, the eye jab alone is nothing in itself. And if it's not practiced properly, you know, it's very hard to get. Good timing, man. You got to be able to have good geographical, you know, direction, you know, towards the human body. And it doesn't, you know, to where the face is. And it's got to happen fast. Hey, if I can knock you in the mouth, I will jab you in the eyes. If you aren't quick enough to get out of the way of my punch, you're not going to get quick enough to get out of the way of my fingers going into your eyes. Simple as that. So there's really no argument to that. I just think most people have not been jabbed into the fucking eyes, you know, to see what it's like, you know. I don't think people have been fucking kicked to the balls. And let me tell you, man, I've kicked guys, you know, working as doorman. I've had guys who I didn't know, obviously, it was just strangers, guys who are just huge guys, you know, that I knew that this is not going to be, they're not going out, you know. They're not going out, and I'm not wrestling with them. It's not a struggle. I'm not doing the struggle thing. Struggle is for the fucking octagons, for the ring. It's for the tournament. I'm not there to struggle with him and see him, but that's if one guy only knows that, that's what he's going to do. If he's exposed and open to other areas, then he's going to take that and put it in with other things that he's already learned as well. You know, I've taken a shot in a guy, man, a guy twice my size. I'm 6 feet. I've had a guy 6'4", man, big mother, you know, and whacked him hard in the nuts. And watch this guy within a, you know, in the beginning he thought, you know, it didn't do anything, because it took about 2 seconds for the pain to literally sink in, you know, and watch him collapse. You know, and most people think that the job for you know, for kicking somebody in the nuts would be just to make him collapse. For me, it was just a byproduct of what I needed him to do. If I snapped enough into his nuts with my front leg, you know, just to get him to dump just to do this a bit, my lead and my cross are coming straight in because he's left me that opening. That's what my intention was to begin with. So yeah, there's absolutely, you know, some very, very, very important things that that we do train that are street worthy and fight worthy, that don't pertain to the sport side. But that's what Pankration is about. And I think today the sport has taken over in a very delusional way that you can do this and this in the street and you can't, you know, as opposed to a methodical way of fighting. Now, I don't agree with some of the stuff and I have been, and I do, you know, and I have done Kung Fu and I've got a black sash in that. And while, you know, we did a lot of things, we wouldn't really do a lot. We did as much as we did traditional. My teacher was also a little bit untraditional. We had a bunch of guys in there that came from different areas, and we experimented a lot in our sparring time, especially the stand-up and the grappling. So it was not that you're purely traditional. You take a traditional system, not to take anything away from them, but you can't really fight traditional in that manner. They have a couple of good things, like, you know, that they do have, that they possess, but they too must adapt. Like I had seen a documentary a few years back where Shaolin monks are picking up Western boxing. Why? Because it's practical. It's just practical. So while they might have things that are more street-oriented, they're not put in perspective properly. So Pankration was all about function. There was no ritual to it. That's the difference. There was no ritual to Pankration. There was not a ceremony when it came to the training. It wasn't mimicking animals, and it wasn't mimicking there was nothing religious about the training itself. It was functional. It was practical. It was made so that you can go into the battlefield, not survive, win. That's what it was made for. Hence why they were known as the most brutal of all fighters back then. It was the game that took over everything else. They loved the running and the spear throw and everything else, but they looked forward to this, man, because this was where you showed everything. The arena was opened, you know, the playing field was open to everybody that was trained for it, regardless of weight. And they wanted to see, what can you do? And it reflected reality, bar the eye gouging, fish hooking, and biting. So we don't have that today, you know. And while there are some really top end guys out there, you know, that can do some damage, that does put a limitation to what they can do relative to who they meet up with. Don't forget, back in the ancient days also, Pancratius wouldn't even attempt to have a fight with anybody less than their caliber. So to say an MMA guy today would take out two guys, well, yeah, they probably would. Are they trained or are they not trained? Who are they taking out? You know, these questions need to be asked. I mean, the reality is a bitch. And when you're dealing with reality, you must ask the harsh questions. You know, again, these top tier MMA guys today are fucking brutal. Brutal in the way that they train, brutal in what they're capable of enduring, you know, in all senses of the word. Add a knife to them, you know. I'm just saying, like, imagine adding a knife to them, taking their training in a 3D spectrum, you know. Then that becomes a serious. And then you're talking about a serious, you know, a serious warrior here, right? And you can have, let's say, you know, and it's funny today because we say, well, you know, military people need to train differently than the MMA guys need to train. When we start getting into stuff like that, I still compare it to the ancient times because nothing's really changed. From civilian to the military. Well, if you take military in ancient Greece, they trained for the civilian games as well as the military themselves. Although the military weren't trained as well as Olympic pancratists, because the military had to rely a lot on sword and shield. And there are examples where it's been proven where top end military guys, like Alexander's top guy, got beaten the hell out of him by an Olympic pancratiist. So why should the military be trained differently than an MMA guy or a regular pancratiist? Well, first and foremost, there are different nuances. He's got a gun, he's got a knife, he's got to be able to use all these. Train differently? No. Approach it in a different manner? Absolutely. Trained in the sense that I need to know how to access my weapons, prevent my weapons being taken away from them, take an approach where it allows me to defend myself? Absolutely. The approach is different. My weapons are still the same. I still have 2 arms, 10 fingers. Whoever's got 10 fingers, you know, left after a campaign, you know, and 2 arms, 2 legs, I still have to be able to use them accordingly. elbows, knees, I still have to be able to use them accordingly no matter what. It doesn't change. What changes is if I have a third leg, then that's a problem for the other guy. Or a third arm. Now we have a problem. But they don't need to. So, you know, there's a lot of these different concepts that are coming around that, you know, that require different type of training. It's not the different type of training. It's a different type of approach to their training. Law enforcement officers who can't use certain things, you know, have to be not trained differently, but have to respond differently, which kind of my heart goes out to these people because they are usually bound by laws and limitations that put them in danger and in harm's way. Kudos and my hat off to these individuals that have been able to defend themselves against a guy who's going at it with them. But it's also shown that there's some violent fuckers, man, that'll come at you, you know, and not in a grappling way. They'll really fucking come at you really fast, man. And you know, you cannot sit there and follow protocol to rule when my life depends on it, especially if he's going to take the weapon from me and take it. This is where I completely disagree with a lot of these type of training and institutions that back up this type of methodology. My life depends on it. I will fuck the fucker up. There's no question about it. I advocate, fuck him up, kill him on the fucking spot so you can go home to your family, especially if this fucker is a killer and he's going to go out, he's going to kill you and he's going to kill somebody else. Take him out, finish him, and that's that. Fuck protocol. That's what I would prefer. Supposed to try to take him down in the proper way and green zones, red zones. Fuck the zones, man. That's what I say. What the fuck is it? My life is depending on it. I'm going to face a zone? And I think, like I said, I give credit to the law enforcement officers who have to follow these. And again, a big hats off to the guys that have actually been able to, under the worst circumstances, maintain that. And you've seen some of the videos on Facebook, on Facebook or YouTube, where some of these fights have been caught on tape. You know, where an officer is struggling for his fucking life, man, has been taught to grapple and struggle his way out. And only trying to maintain from that perspective, because I don't know what's going on in his mind. If I do this, I'm going to get fucked later. Well, you're going to get fucked right there. I'd rather fucking fuck you up, take you out completely, and then worry about the commission later on. But at least I took out a motherfucker that has got a record, that's out to kill me, and kill somebody else in the process too. And then have to deal with the commission, but I saved my life. Like they say, I'd rather have fucking 6 guys, you know, a jury of 12 judging me than 6 carrying me, you know. So yeah, there were huge differences in the way that the training was approached back then. The body was more solidified. It was harder. The impact level was much greater because don't forget, these guys are pushing. I mean, I have a 100-pound sandbag. It's no bigger than this, and it's 100 pounds, about this big, you know, and about, I'd say, this round, right? So it's not huge, and that's 100 pounds. And I've got 100-pound punching bags that hang, that are like about 4 feet high. And this is only about 1.5 feet, 4 feet high, packed in with material that swing like a fucking canary, you know, when little kids are hitting it. To me, that does absolutely nothing for power, you know, and for speed or for anything like that. But that's what we've known in the 20th and 21st century. And that in itself is all to protect the hands from getting hit. And this protect has caused us to be over-pamperized. You know, put diapers on our hands and on our fucking butts, man. Super equipment on our thighs. Well, to make it, and to a certain degree, I acknowledge that. For those that want a bit of a taste of that, and while they build their, their resilience to the striking and the impact, although there are methods of getting built, you know, I've had people in my school, which I got to give credit to some individuals. A good friend of mine, Mark, who's one of the fathers of the kids in my school. You know, before he started training in Pankration, and Mark, this goes out to you, man. Total credit. You're my poster boy. This is the typical example of somebody who is a pacifist, very religious individual. I love this guy. He's amazing family. All the people in my school are amazing people. Great individuals. And he was the type that, you know, like, wasn't used to this hard roughing, rougherage, and being tossed around, and bruises, and this, that was not his thing. His kids are absolutely amazing. So here you took sensitive individuals, very porcelain-like, and very scared, and with a proper method, taught them to want to progress into something, and to endure a little more and a little more, because their fears were also taken back, and they were able to confront more. They developed more confidence, knowing, oh, I can take it. And well, here you have a father who was at one point said, I don't know, man, if this is for me. This is like pretty rough, pretty this, pretty that. And well, eventually he took the plunge in there, and to experience what his kids were experiencing. And here's an individual who was a typical businessman, IT guy, that can surprise the shit out of somebody, really come out of fucking nowhere, and you think that he's not that type of individual. All of a sudden, I was working pads with him last night. Fuck, man. I mean, this is what happens when you train a regular individual. And not only that, but he is able to endure a lot of the stuff that we place on the students, and it's always voluntary, meaning if somebody doesn't want to in my school, there's absolutely no way we won't push through that. There's others who say, well, yeah, let me try some of that, and we will. And there's a gradual progression to it. And here's a guy who was like completely sensitive to somebody who's taking, not only can dish out a beating, but can take massive beating, shin, especially when we were shin knives, come out black and blue, this and that, and looking proud of it, and say, wow. Who would have thought 2 years ago I was able to endure this, and here I am. But because that's what happens. Through nature, we're all alike. Through practice, we all differ. And it depends, again, what type of practice you're doing. You take a most sensitive individual and turn him into a fucking lion. It all depends how you go about it. Now, if the instructor is a fucking ego-based, idiot, the guy that's like, I'll try to satisfy you, oh, this is what you gotta do, but doesn't take into consideration, this is how human beings function. This is how we work. Not everybody's the same. Not everybody's born a fucking Spartan warrior. Just because you were born in Sparta back in the day did not make you a fucking Spartan warrior. There are many that were cast on the side. Many that just couldn't. And then there was those that came from outside of Sparta that were tougher than the Spartans. Xenophon, one of them, one of many, who became a general in the Spartan army after the Peloponnesian War. And his father was one of the big generals of Athens who fought against the Spartans, couldn't stand the Spartans. But he appreciated the type of training that got him through the worst experience of his life when he wound up having to defend Cyris against his brother Xerxes for the throne, when he was part of the 10,000 Greeks trained under a vicious Spartan who was thrown out of Sparta because even he was such a warmonger, the Spartans didn't want him anymore in Sparta because there was a peace after 27 years in Sparta, in Greece, and this guy still wanted war. Well, Cyris employed him. He made, probably they said that that military 10,000, you can read that in what's the book? It's called the 10,000 by, I'm going to get that and I'm going to put it underneath the link below, the descriptions below. And it's incredible. And I mean, I've read it from the book and from the original text of Xenophon, where these guys, after, and I don't want to break the story, I don't want to be a plot killer, but he found himself in a position where it didn't go through the way Cyris wanted it to happen, and he found himself with 10,000 Greeks in the Caucasus Mountains, surrounded by massive, barbaric tribes that were out to kill these guys. And had it not been for that type of training that particular Spartan who didn't make it, so the first part, and the thing how it's funny how things just happen to be, it happened. Like they say, things are meant to be so that history can come out and say, wow, it was him and not this guy. Because Xenophon was the weaker one. And remember, his father used to bring Pankration into the house to train him. And he used to beat the shit out of him just to get him to toughen up. And he would say it, he would chronicle, and that didn't really work for him, It was more because he was more an intellect. He was an intellectual. So, but what got him through that ordeal of getting back to Greece, having gone the long way around, because they were in Asia Minor and they were in the Orient now, they had to find themselves going back to Greece, and now there was a whole trail of armies behind them that fight off and stave off, and still find their way to the coast so they can get to Greece. It was, had it not been for the training of that one particular guy, that Spartan, that trained everybody, that said that probably was, they were much tougher than the Spartans themselves. It was just a bunch of mercenaries put together from different parts of Greece. You know, they would never have made it home had it not been for that type of training. Well, it's the same thing with reality versus sport. Hence why the military, will impose much more harsher conditions on you than any MMA camp will. MMA camp? Sorry, that's another podcast in itself, which I have a very big problem with. MMA camp. Fucking camp? You should be in fucking camp every fucking day, all year fucking round. That's the only thing we knew. We knew how to train one way back in my day. I'm 54 this year. One fucking way, man. And that was the way, is give it your all every fucking day. What is this? I'm in camp, so now I'm going to really train 3-4 hours a day. When I'm not in camp, I'm going to relax. Party by the beach, by the pool, hang around here, do a little bit of training, a little this, a little that. But camp comes in, that's where the real training happens. Fucking bullshit. I call fucking bullshit on that. Train every fucking day of your fucking life, man. Every day like you are going to fight tomorrow. Every fucking day. And that's how it should be. And that's how these guys trained back then. That's why they're fucking different. They weren't fucking these rose petals, and fucking starlet boys and girls, looking to be under the fucking spotlight and whatever. To them, it was about honor, man. It was about honor and glory of their training and the belief system and that they had, for their training. It wasn't about fucking, getting the belt and getting a fucking hundreds, tens of millions of dollars in the Ferrari and trashing fucking hotel rooms and this and that or whatever because I can get away with it because I get entitlement issues. These guys were the pinnacle, man. And we say that any one of our guys today could take on them. Give me a fucking break. Not even in your wildest fucking dreams would you be able to go up against anybody like that. They would stare the fuck out of you down. You'd be fucking pissing down your pants and shitting down your legs, man. Just at the thought of what these guys are capable of doing. The fact that any one of their strikes come in, all they've been doing is striking. Like I said, one of my sandbags is this small. It's 100 pounds. And that fucker, as soon as you hit, ain't gonna swing the way you want it to. It has an immediate effect upon impact on the fist, on the wrist, on the fist, on the knuckles, on the bones itself and the muscles that support the wrist, on the wrist that supports the fist itself, on the forearm, on the elbow, on the shoulder that's gotta back it up, on the core itself, on the lower back. You'll feel it every way, man. It has a major effect. And these guys were doing bags of fucking 300-400 pounds, massive big bags. And I've got a 200-pounder that was done by a good friend of mine, a manufacturer, martial arts manufacturing company here in Montreal. And he did a sandbag for me, which is a tubular one. It's about this round, and it's about 5 feet. Oh no, 5 feet tall. 4 or 5 feet tall. Yeah, 4 or 5 feet, anyways, whatever. And it's 250 pounds of sand. That mother is a column, man. But it's our bone builder. It's our punch builder. It's our impact builder. Not my fucking 150-pound bags that you can build speed on anything today. But that doesn't mean impact power is the same based on what you're hitting. So if my 200-pound sandbag, upon impact is gushing, well, what do you think a head that weighs 15 pounds is going to do? Hence why a lot of people used to say, well, where do you get the punching power from? And I'm not a boxer. I boxed for many, many years. Amateur, like, didn't even know, I had never done because boxing was not my thing. I needed to use my legs all the time. So, and I felt comfortable that way, and I always will. I will not just sit there and box. It's not second nature for me. For me, I need to use every part of my body. So, where did you get that from? You get a reputation from being able to impart a certain, impact on somebody that says, oh fuck. And that's because I've worked on sandbags all my life. All my life. I've never used wraps. And I never use wraps. I don't advocate wraps. There is a way though of doing things that strengthen the bones, the muscles, the connective tissue, with time. And we do use a different type of bags for different things, absolutely. But I don't rely on only my regular, compressed clothing bags. I do rely on the stuff that we use in the ancient times. So there's a lot to discuss in terms of the type of training behind that and the technical. And I will have at the school. I will be doing YouTube videos for members and non-members about technical videos that we'll be doing in terms of techniques, approaches, the way we stand, the way we move, and how we approach a certain scenario, from very basic to intermediate to advanced. I haven't done any yet, and I will be starting them very, very soon in the next couple of weeks, including the principles of the 3D principles that we have in Armak, Pankration, Disorient, Disable, Destroy, which are exclusive to Armak Pankration because they are put behind a method in there, and we've been using them for so many years. The videos will come out on YouTube. I will let everybody know through my social network also. On my website too. You guys can always check out my website. It's been revamped by a group of guys who I will be naming, and they've done an amazing job. And there's stuff that will be coming out that'll be visual for people to learn, and to learn what the differences are as we move around. And I wanted to put together a tutorial that allows you to understand, the fight game better, how we work. And I'm not talking of a fight game from one system's perspective, but from a real life perspective where anything can come in, right? And not from a perspective of a Wing Chun guy or of a Thai guy or of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy or of a Cali guy or whatever, but somebody who has an understanding of how anything can happen at any time, and we've trained for that. So we will be putting down those videos together for our audience, our members, and then I will have a tutorial where you can register. There's a fee, a monthly fee for those that are not with us in the area. They can come to the school, that can learn off of these YouTube videos, and they will be obviously with password. They'll be for members and for paid members, and I'm going to try to make them as meticulous and anal-like as possible, giving you an understanding of why this way and not that way, and what options we have, right? So it's not just my approach, it's an approach that I've understood, that has worked for all of my life, especially having to live in the streets, fight in the streets, and work as a doorman in some of the worst clubs out there, where we had at least a brawl every night. And that gave me the experience to see what others have not been able to see, but to hear of. Would I go back to those days? Absolutely not, because there were some pretty rough days. But I do thank God for the experience that I have had with him, and that I've gotten out alive and not had made any enemies in the process, because I always considered that, listen, you do unto others, you would have them do unto you, and there was always mercy. I mean, I think the only guys that I had ever gone hard on were guys I didn't know that came looking for me, that were literally out personally to injure me. Anybody else, I think we were just, I learned well from my teachers that says you use only a certain amount that you need to use to get the job done. Anything more than that is called abusive. And I still advocate that today. Another topic that I get questioned on a lot is, and I see it's a big struggle for a lot of people, especially women today, trying to get back into fitness, or trying to get fit again. That are in their late 30s or early 40s. They found themselves, having to be housewives and mothers, working outside of the home, working in the home, taking care of kids, many kids. And I'll have that. I'll have a specific episode hosted here with my woman, my girlfriend Helen Jatras, which will be. Which she will give her experience also. She's been training all of her life. She's in incredible shape. She's got 3 kids, and I don't think there's anybody better to do it, to be able to give her end of the perspective. And she takes care of the women's Spartan Fit boot camp. She does an amazing job, and I suggest anybody, the girls out there that want to try a real boot camp, not a boot camp based on just planks, and little exercise, one that where you can see actually huge differences in the way your strength is increased, your endurance, your explosivity, your ability to function on a daily business. increases, I suggest you come out and try us out at the try the Women's Spartan Fit Boot Camp with Helen. She's amazing. I'll give you guys the info as to where we are at the end of the podcast. So a lot of women will ask, a lot of people do ask me, and they find themselves in a position where they're having a problem trying to get themselves back into shape. This is a big topic, huge topic that I want to slightly touch on and then elaborate more with Helen. The number one thing that I see in these scenarios is people are too demanding of themselves. First and foremost, they have not trained in many years, if they've ever trained to begin with. So you're trying to go from one mindset to another mindset and try to develop, try to acquire the other mindset immediately. Your own natural instincts you've been training them to say no, yes as an idea, but in reality, oh no, when it comes time to doing it. Same thing with a smoker. He's trained himself to smoke constantly. When the time comes where he should not be smoking and where he has to cut it, all of a sudden the voices in his head are telling him something completely different. It's fear. It's always fear. And I appreciate some of the women that have come up to me and said, I'm scared. I am scared. I'm afraid. I'm afraid, they go. And I go, and it's interesting because they expect, and I can understand why, because there's a lot of people out there that are instructors so full of themselves that they're almost intimidating to these individuals that have not ever done anything. So to them, it's a frightening experience. I have to look like you. There's a certain amount of pressure, and the first thing I tell them is that first and foremost, you've got to have compassion for yourself. First and foremost, you've got to be compassionate with yourself, and you cannot demand yourself to climb Mount Everest, off the get-go. Don't even look at the summit. Don't look at the summit. Look at your 2 feet down here. Look in front, but look at your 2 feet. Take one step at a time. And yeah, that's saying that a journey of 1,000,000 miles starts with one step. Absolutely. It's great as a meme, it's great as a metaphor, but you got to somehow put it into action. And the only way you put something into action is by having an understanding of yourself first and how you function internally, what scares you, to admit it to yourself, to say, well, this is the things that scare me. These are the things that I'd like to accomplish. How am I going to get there? What are my expectations? Short term, long term. Sometimes I say, don't even make any expectations. Have fun. Get out there and have fun. Say, I'm going to fuck up. I'm so going to fuck up. I'm going to have a good time fucking up. If you've got a good instructor, one that feels for you, has got empathy for you, sees that you're going to be, that you have brought yourself to the point where you say, hey man, I want to do this. They understand your position because they've been there themselves also. They will be very sensitive to that, and will make you feel like, yes, you can fuck up. Absolutely. You're not going to go nowhere near what you think you're going to do the first month. The fact that you can actually just wet your feet is important because you're introducing something to your body you didn't introduce before, different stresses. We use the word training and exercise in a very wrong way. This is absolutely, and this is what I think what scares people, is because they expect that training should be done in a very way. You're kind of like going in and you're laughing all the time. It's a laughable thing. It's enjoy it. I enjoyed myself. Yeah, you should enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself the best you possibly can, given with what you got. Not torture yourself off the beginning. There's no enjoyment to that, pushing yourself past the point where the body can, or the brain, your own brain won't allow you to go through. So the important thing is to understand is this. If you've spent so many years of your life training yourself to think in a particular way, living in particular patterns that were not health-oriented or training-oriented, getting yourself to go into that requires, first and foremost, sympathetic understanding of yourself and acknowledgement, saying that I'm not a fitness expert. I won't be a fitness queen or king anytime soon, but I do want to get myself in shape. I want to feel good about myself. And I want to start somewhere. And finding the right person is the most important thing. First and foremost, regardless if it's a guy teaching or a girl teaching. So the important things to understand, say, well, I've trained myself to think like this so many years. This acknowledges that you acknowledge to yourself that, you know what, I've been training myself to shoot myself in the foot every time I attempt to do something. How do I break out of it? Well, number one, my fear. I don't want to have any major expectations. I don't. I just want to get out and move. Yeah, I'm going to flop around, and have zero balance, not be able to do a fucking push-up. But you know what? I'm there. I had a good time. I would have stayed home, sitting there going, in denial, eating my fucking food away, gaining more and more weight, because everything you do has a consequence, no matter what you do. So every time you're going to put something in your mouth, you're going to have to ask yourself, well, what's this going to do? But it feels nice when you can say, you know what, I didn't have major demands or expectations of myself. I went there, I got there, and I got through the class, and I feel pretty good. I'm not comparing myself to anybody else because they're in a different world. But I will get to that world. It's like you're looking at people that learn how to drive. You're 13 years old and you see people driving easily as if it's nothing. How do you know these people weren't like you when you first started? Nervous, scared, out of their wits, not knowing, oh, how am I going to straighten the steering wheel? How's the car going to go straight? How's it going to turn? When I do turn, how's it going to straighten out again? How's this? These are things you navigate as you go along. Don't try to understand what that person is going through. Don't try to understand what they were. You can relate as they relate to you. But to try to put yourself in their shoes is not the right thing. Keep yourself in your shoes. Understand your shoes right now by understanding yourself, being sympathetic and compassionate with yourself and saying, well, I'm going to do what I possibly can for myself right now, and I will get better every day. Every day I will be better than the day before. You will put your own pressure on your own. Now in my school, I like to say, because I see people, they get overzealous. Ego takes over. And we say leave, like in most places, leave the ego at the door. We do leave the ego at the door. I make sure you leave the ego at the door. You're not going to do past what you can't do. You're going to stay within what you can do and understand it and get the encouragement that you need, and the mental understanding that, hey, listen, what you're doing right now is absolutely amazing. Today you did 1 push-up. Tomorrow you'll do a 1.5 push-up. Then you'll do 2 push-ups. And you will increase as you move along. And it'll happen naturally. What you want it to do is happen naturally without you even thinking about it. And then when you start feeling the strength, because you're feeling better, you're starting to drop the weight slowly, by making little shifts in the way you eat. We're so used to eating sugar, it's become so addictive to our systems that we will go for foods that turn into sugar in our system, in our bodies. Breads, pastas, things that are, that are just, they just bunch up, that give us the weight, and that become very addictive to the brain. The brain-gut connection is insane in the way that it functions. So by making small little adjustments and saying, well, I'm going to slowly cut this out. I'm not making drastic stuff, little adjustments. And then those that have just said, I've had enough, finished, man, done. I can't do this anymore. I got to lose the weight. I got to this, that. There are those that can, but there are those that can't also. There's those that just say, I can't do it like that. That's fine. Everybody's different. We're 8 billion people in the world. Man, 8 billion people except for identical twins, I'll do things differently. We behave the same, but we do have different nuances, different characters, right? So the thing is, the most important thing is, get yourself out there, find the right thing, and let's distinguish exercise from fun. If you're going to a Zumba class, kudos to those that are doing Zumba that are 300 pounds and consider it an exercise, absolutely. You're going to Zumba class because you're having fun dancing, you're 75 years old, and man, I can show you 75-year-old women lifting weights. That to me is exercise. See, we use the word exercise, we've misinterpreted it. We're using the wrong word. In ancient times, they didn't use the word exercise. It's a general word. I'm exercising my rights. I'm exercising, or I'm training. I'm training for what? Training to become a secretary? Training to become a dog groomer? No. The term they used for physical exercise that made metabolic changes to your body was called agonas, agonizome, where the word agonize comes from. Hence why in the ancient times it weren't called the Olympic Games, Olympiaka Pechnivia. Games. It was called Olympiakes Agones, Olympic agons, because they agonized. There was no training without agony. You had to agonize to get to where you were, man. You had to fucking put in sweat, tear, make the muscles contract, work hard for it. It brought a different mindset when I'm going to agonize, as opposed to I'm going to train. Take a person who does fucking Zumba or does any one of those type of things where after a while, you lose a certain amount of water. It's fun, it's great. As opposed to staying in the house, 100 times better get out there. I give credit to those people. But it's not exercise that causes metabolic changes and shifts within the body. It's fun. Much better than doing nothing anytime. Don't get me wrong, don't start stabbing me with,
hey, you don't know about Zumba, and you don't know about this, and you're talking out of your fucking ass, and you don't know shit, and blah, blah, blah. And if fucking you come and do a Zumba class.
I don't want to fucking do a Zumba class. I've done marathons, man. I do Spartan races and I run. Whether I gain 15, 20 pounds or 5 pounds or whatever, and I can lose them like this on those, I don't want to do Zumba. I do Greek dancing if I want to lose extra pounds for the next fucking 5 hours. But there's a better way for shorter period of time that tackles strength. They will not tackle the strength required to create density in the bone, in the skeletal muscular system, which the only way that is done, which is known today by medical scientists and biologists and those in human kinetics and human sciences, is that by very, very heavy resistance. Heavy resistance, it tugs on the muscle, lifting something heavy, pushing something heavy, tugs and pulls the ligaments on the muscle, on the bones, which create density. Now you put good food behind that. You don't see the effects of what good exercise with good food will do to the body. I bet you if the body was transparent and you could see it, which would be pretty fucking ugly, you'd probably see it differently and say, wow, this is what it's doing. As opposed to, I had my Zumba class today, or I did a little bit of Greek dancing, and you know what? I'm going to go home and have my popcorn. Because it's only got like 600 calories. It ain't going to work that way. That's not going to strengthen your bone. That's not going to strengthen your muscle. It's not going to strengthen the muscle fiber or the muscle group itself where you need it. And that's what causes, especially within women, osteoporosis after the age of 30, 35, which starts decreasing. And for men, it doesn't do anything in terms of their raising testosterone, which is known to actually help longevity. It doesn't help balance out the estrogen testosterone levels within men or women. It is an aerobics exercise, and at the very least, to the lowest end. You want an aerobics exercise? Run. Melt the fucking fat off. But then again, you can't outrun your fork. So people going into an exercise program, especially those that have not done anything in years, understand this. You have trained your entire life to not do this. You have trained most of your life to do what you're doing now regularly. Go to work, have a bagel, get up, have a coffee, have a bagel, put something in your system right away. Have a coffee, go to work. Oh, I had a piece of celery for snack, but I had a pizza slice for lunch. I mean, really? Come back home, I made fusilli alla pasta della blah blah blah. And I made my own bread. I made my own bread. I didn't buy my bread from outside. I made my own bread. So it's homemade, carbohydrate, hard clogging, muffin top filling, bread. It's my own. It's different from anybody else's, different from store-bought. It's my own. So that excuses me and makes me eat. And then have some more snack, and then eat all the way to 12. And I had a glass of water, so I can make sure that I can go to bed okay. But I ate an entire fucking Noah's Ark, but I had a glass of water. And the first thing I do is I get up in the morning and I have a glass of water. Then I have the rest of the crap throughout the day. So you've trained yourself to do that for years. I'm just making a little, just a little fun here. But you've trained yourself to do that for many, many years. What you need to do now is, first, be very compassionate with yourself and understand that, hey, listen, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill, not a massive uphill. The difference between a loser and a winner is a loser looks at stuff and says, hey, man, I can't do that, man. That's impossible. I can't do that. I can't do that. Based on what I'm at, where I'm at, I can't do that. A winner looks at it and says, yeah, it's going to be pretty hard. That looks pretty hard. I've got a long way to go, but it's not impossible. I can do it. So the way you think about it up here is going to change everything, first and foremost. It's understanding that you're not going to do everything in one day. You're going to do everything slowly, slowly. But you're going to make little changes. And those are practices, replacing old habits with new ones. Not massive, drastic changes, small little changes. Be compassionate with yourself. And then move on to slower. Now, here's the funny thing. Here's where people fail. This is where people fuck up big time. This, I need the next 2 months to get in shape for winter, for summer. Bikini. They're like 300 pounds overweight. And they need the next 2 months to get into shape. Really? Seriously? 2 months? To lose 50 pounds? Whoever gave you that concept, stop reading those books. Get off of Facebook, except, just communicating with family and friends from overseas or whatever. And go see a nutritionist or a therapist to get perspective again. Because you have been duped big time. You train a summer body in the winter. At 18 years old, if you're training, and Helen will tell you this, if you're training at 18, you're not training for 18 years old. You're training for when you're 28, 38. What you do today matters what's happening tomorrow. So you eat like an orca today, you will look like an orca tomorrow. You train today, you might not look like it today. But in 5 years, 10 years, that's exactly what you've trained for it to look like. So you've come out of a pattern that is pretty bad, very negative. You need time to break that pattern. It won't happen overnight. But little steps, you'll see differences in the way you feel. Your confidence level goes up because you've taken little steps to it, not massive changes. Especially the type of changes where people, you get nutrition. Some nutritionists are very bad for you too. Because they'll cause you to go boom, lose everything fast, where the body doesn't adapt. Massive, crazy type diets, where now you've got massive skin, flabbing. You get to the weight that you've lost, that you wanted to lose, but you haven't trained yourself here. You haven't trained yourself to maintain that pattern. And all of a sudden, I gained the weight. I lost the weight. I'm good. I can sit back now. Have my extra this, have my extra that. And all of a sudden you gain weight, the weight goes back on and it doubles. Why? Because what you did is you restricted completely. Not maintained, you've restricted, suppressed, not repressed, suppressed it completely. With a date to get to that. So your resilience ends at that, there's an expiry date to it. Instead of saying, this is going to be my life. I'm going to get used to this. I'm going to get used to these little things, and I will have my cheat days maybe once a week. Maybe add a little here and there. Because it's up to most people put that deadline. I want to lose that 20 pounds. Once they lose that 20 pounds, 6 months down the line, they gain it again. A year later, they've gained more than the 20 pounds because the body needs to, out of defense, self-defense mechanism, self-preservation, it'll gain it back. Because I'll tell you why. And here is the reason. And this is why I've seen guys who have come to my school, 300 plus pounds, within a year lose an easy 100 pounds, get to their weight, and then 2 years later or 5 years later come back and say, I'm back up again and I've gained an extra 50. And this is the reason why. You listening? Check this out. The reason why you're going to gain it back is because your 20, 30 years of eating bad and developing bad habits will greatly outweigh your 6 months or 1 year of dieting and exercise if you've put an expiry date to that exercise. 1 year, and they say it only takes 30, this is the bullshit that people will sell you, especially those that are out to sell you products, products tagged along with fitness, and that's what they try to do, is they try to throw these slogans at you. It only takes 30 days to change your habits. Fucking bullshit. Bullshit, and shame on those fucking people that are selling such garbage to others you know, to slightly motivate them for the sake of their fucking profits. Shame on those fucking individuals, man. Because they know shit all about fucking training. And this is the problem with a lot of fucking personal trainers today. You know, up and coming new personal trainers. Never fucking, barely did an exercise in their lives. All of a sudden, I just want to be a personal trainer because I'm a stay-at-home mom. I got to do something. Personal training. As if personal training is if they know how to train other people. Anyways, not to run off to that. It's another topic in itself, which we will cover later on. So now you've got 20, 30 years of training, of eating like a slob, having no patterns except bad patterns. Telling yourself the wrong things up over here, finding different reasons to eat all this bad food. And now you started slowly, because your pattern doesn't change the minute you start exercising. But I've changed. Now I'm on the other side of the wall. Yep, you've entered the 1%, but you must stay there. Now what you need to do is you're slowly starting to shift the pattern. It doesn't take 30 days to change your complete habits. Man, 30 days is only the beginning of it. If it was like that, then those people who have trained for a year, lost their weight and put it back on, they wouldn't put it back on a year and a half later. It's because there's a particular pattern embedded in us. It is a bad pattern. It's like AA, man. It's like any heroin addict, any alcoholic, any alcoholic, man. It's like once you've developed that, once you're off of it, you must stay off of it. You must understand that it is easy for you to fall back on that. You must outweigh the good patterns with the bad patterns by reinforcing the good patterns in a long-term effect, in the long term, not in the short term. I've lost 20 pounds, I'm good, now I'm going to lay back and that's it. You lay back, you're going to get 20 plus 10. Because that's how it works. And you all know somebody that's done that, including yourself, including myself. But at least me, I know it. And I know what I can do and I know what I can't do. I'm not delusional, at least. I know when I gain it and I know when I can take it down and how to take it down. So it's the way that you think about the exercise, and most people have a problem with. A couple of things, just to close off here. Number one, be compassionate. That's what I got to tell you. Find somebody that makes you feel comfortable. Look and see what kind of training are they doing. Are they really challenging their bodies? Are they sitting there doing heavy exercises also? The heavy exercises. The heavy body weight exercises. Heavy pulling exercises. Heavy pushing exercises. Or are they just doing little things for the sake of cardio? Core only doesn't work. You must be able to lift yourself. When you start doing pull-ups, you know that you've developed strength. Pull-ups without a band, you know you're developing strength. You can toss a 300-pound tire or 400-pound tire, you know that you've developed some serious leg and arm strength and body strength in general. You're sitting there doing planks all night, throughout the whole thing, that's not going to cut it for too long. Good core strength for a little while, limited. You must challenge, the body must be challenged all the time. Go in there and understand, saying, you know what, I'm going to take my time in the beginning. I know I'm going to suffer based on what I can do, but I'm not going to do more than what I can. And I'm going to start slowly. And you will wind up challenging yourself daily as you get better and stronger. Why? Because you feel it more. But I also understand I cannot fool myself into thinking that this is the change. Change doesn't come overnight. The change happens gradually when you realize that you have no need anymore for these old patterns. This is where you take it long term without putting an expiry date. I don't have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds to lose. I want to get in a healthy shape. My ideal weight should be this, but I want to stay healthy. I want to be healthy looking. I want to feel healthy. I want to know that I can sprint up the stairs, sprint down the stairs, and run around the block as fast as I possibly can without feeling like I'm going to have a stroke right here. And that doesn't take overnight. Never think that you're going to reach to a particular goal in a certain amount of time and then just drop it. Because your old habits will far outweigh your newly formed ones in a short period of time. Newly formed ones must be continuously reinforced so that the old ones will diminish. Yeah, it might take 30 days for you to develop a new habit, but to keep the habit is completely different. Find yourself a good trainer. Make sure they got fucking experience, man. That's the most important thing. They got experience. I got 40-something years experience in the arts and in the martial arts and physical fitness industry. And make no fucking mistake, you do not distinguish one from the other. Well, you're not into the fitness, you're into the martial arts. What the fuck do you think we do, man? What the fuck do you think we do? There's no fitter fucking guy than a martial artist, a real fucking warrior. A guy that can fucking sit there and battle his way against 2, 3, 4 fucking guys. We are fucking soldiers, man. Soldiers without fucking guns in the street, but we're the guys out there, no different than the soldiers out in the field. We make great fucking soldiers. We can do anything. Climb, pull, lift, jump, crawl. There's nothing we can't do. Nothing we can't do. We are the ultimate fitness. That's, again, depending on the martial arts system. But warriors are the fittest people, man, around. No, not CrossFitters. That's not functional. I'll tell you why. I'll give you a very, very quick one. When Alexander the Great crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor, the first place he got into was the Temple of Artemis. I think it was the Temple of Artemis or Aphrodite. I think it was one of those two. And it was completely destroyed by the Persians. It was like in shambles, burnt down. The only thing standing were big sculptures of these big, huge men. Huge muscles, huge. And Alexander the Great, that represented strength, physical fitness. That represented, the beauty of the body, of the physical, strong body. And Alexander's, first question was, where were these bodies when the temple was being burnt down? Where were these bodies when the temple was being burnt down? So it has nothing to do with the size or the ability to lift only, but the ability to be functional. Functional in all ways. Not taking anything away from CrossFit, guys. I take it back. Just saying that everything must have a function. It must be functional. So find somebody, and I suggest you come and try a week at the spa, the Spartan Pankration Academy, Spartan Pankration Mixed Martial Arts Fitness Academy. Come and try a class from one of my classes, or come and try one of Helen's classes. I'm sure you'll love it. I think the first thing that you'll notice is the environment itself and the people that are working in there, that train in there. There's no competitiveness. It is not only for the fighter, it is for everybody. And I think you'll enjoy it. Get comfortable and allow those that have the experience to help you get through your bumps on the road, right? So you're not going to do it yourself. But find those and look and go and come in. We give a week. Go to places that'll give you at least a week, not a day where they put their best foot forward. Man, we put our best foot forward every day, and see that these exercises are challenging. Because even though you might not be able to do that exercise, you'll do another exercise that will slowly get you to that exercise. At your own pace. Not under a clock. And with no deadline. Where you can see results. Come see us at the Academy for all your needs, man. I'll tell you, you will be satisfied. You will not regret the day you walked in there. So I'm going to close this podcast by saying there's a lot to say in terms of a lot to discuss about in terms of pankration, mixed martial arts, fitness, and life in general. There's a lot of things that we are gonna be talking about in the up and coming podcast. I'll have Helen up over here. My co-host George will be here. We will be discussing MMA news that are out there circulating at the moment, and that's it. So again, come and drop by the spa. It's at 1500 Curie Labelle in Chamonix, Laval. We are a corner souvenir. You can't miss us. You can see through the windows. All hell's breaking loose in there. You've got a week free to try out. Kids, adults, moms, pops, everybody's invited. And check out our website at www.pankrationcanada.com for all the info. You can register in for one of the classes on your own through our Zen Planner app in there, and you can call me for any info. Phone number is 514-814-5191. I'm Aris Makris, and this was Pankration Now, and we will be seeing you on the next podcast. So, as we say at the Academy, take life into your own hands before it slips through your fingers.